Have you ever wondered what really happened the moment Jesus died? We're not just talking about a common execution or a distant historical event, but something that literally shook heaven and earth. While many see only the pain and suffering of the cross, few realize that this moment triggered a series of events that changed history forever. And the most surprising part? These events carry messages so powerful that, if understood, they can transform your life today. For example, did you know that an earthquake shook the earth and that people who were dead came back to life? This isn't fiction. It's straight from the Bible. And there's more. A symbol that for centuries separated God from humanity was destroyed, and even a Roman soldier, the last person you'd expect, recognized the truth about Jesus. These are details many overlook, yet they hold profound lessons about God's power and the impact of Christ's sacrifice. Want to know what these events mean and how they speak directly to your heart? Get ready, because you're about to explore one of the most extraordinary moments in human history, and I guarantee you'll never see the cross the same way again. It was as if creation itself felt the magnitude of that moment. When Jesus gave up his spirit, the earth shook, splitting rocks and shaking the foundations. This was no ordinary natural phenomenon, but a powerful message, a cry from creation proclaiming something monumental had occurred. Imagine being there, seeing rocks split apart, buildings sway, and feeling the ground tremble underfoot like never before. There's no denying it. This earthquake was the earth's response to the Creator's sacrifice. The symbolism of this upheaval runs deep. The earth, which for so long bore the footsteps of men and women, now reacted to the weight of the most important event in history. Every fractured rock seemed to declare, "You must understand what has happened here." It's like those moments in our lives when something so significant happens that even the environment around us seems to change, leaving indelible marks. Have you ever thought about how life's significant changes also leave earthquakes in your personal history? Moreover, the earthquake served as a vivid reminder. No one is untouched by the impact of the cross. Just as the earth was shaken in that moment, our lives can also be shaken when confronted with the reality of Jesus' sacrifice. It's no wonder people say their worlds change when they encounter the gospel's message. And speaking of transformations, what happened next was even more astonishing, breaking every natural expectation. The scene was nothing short of extraordinary. When Jesus died, many holy people who had passed away came back to life. Imagine being in Jerusalem that day, seeing individuals who were once buried now walking through the city. These resurrections were living testimonies, literally, of Jesus' victory over death. It was as if God offered a glimpse of the future, where death would no longer have the final word. What makes this event so impactful is the message it carries. It wasn't just about the people who rose, but what they represented. Each one was a fulfilled promise, proof that God's power knows no bounds, not even the borders of life and death. It's like when someone overcomes something deemed impossible. It fills us with hope, reminding us that no barrier is insurmountable for God. And here's what's fascinating. These resurrections pointed directly to God's greater plan of redemption. It wasn't just about a momentary miracle, but the beginning of something eternal. If those who were dead could rise, what does that say about God's power in our own stories? And speaking of breaking boundaries, what happened next made it clear that every limitation between heaven and earth was being shattered. The moment Jesus gave up his spirit, the temple veil was torn from top to bottom. It wasn't just a piece of fabric being split, but a symbolic barrier being removed. This veil separated the Holy of Holies, the most sacred place, where only the high priest could enter once a year. Now, anyone could approach God directly without human intermediaries. It was as if a once closed door had been flung wide open for everyone. This rupture carried profound significance. The veil represented the distance between God and humanity, something the old sacrifices could never fully bridge. By tearing, it was as if God declared, "Come." There are no more barriers. This reminds us of how often we create barriers in our own lives, fears, guilt, insecurities. But this event challenges us to tear down these personal veils and draw closer to the divine. Moreover, what happened there marked a paradigm shift. Temples made by human hands were no longer necessary to encounter God's presence. It was now accessible to anyone who sought it, anywhere they were. And if that sounds revolutionary, wait until you hear what happened next. The darkness that covered the earth carried yet another powerful meaning that cannot be ignored. On that day, something unexplainable happened. A supernatural darkness blanketed the earth, even during broad daylight. It wasn't a cloud or a regular eclipse, but a somber silence that seemed to scream about the gravity of the moment. Imagine being there, watching the light fade away as the Son of God hung on the cross. It was as if all creation mourned, witnessing the King die for love. This darkness carried deep symbolism. It was a fulfillment of ancient prophecies, a sign of judgment and lament. Just as the sun refused to shine, the hearts of many were filled with confusion and sorrow. Have you ever thought about how moments of darkness in our lives can also be signs of change? Sometimes, what feels like the end is just the beginning of something we cannot yet see. And as if that wasn't enough, the darkness proclaimed that the world would never be the same. It was a marker, a silent declaration that Jesus' sacrifice was unparalleled in its depth. But even in the midst of this shadow, something even more surprising was happening. Those present, even among the unbelievers, began to realize the true identity of the one on the cross. Among those witnessing the crucifixion was a Roman centurion, someone accustomed to executions and hardened by life's battles. But on that day, something in him changed. Seeing how Jesus died, in silence with dignity, and surrendering his spirit with words of forgiveness and victory, the centurion proclaimed, "Surely this was the Son of God." It was a moment of clarity amid the chaos, a recognition that even the hardest hearts can be touched. This declaration was no accident. The truth was so evident that even a Roman soldier, a representative of the authority that crucified Jesus, couldn't ignore it. Think about how transformation can arise from the most unlikely places and how the impact of a life or a death so meaningful can open eyes that were once blind. How often are we surprised by who recognizes something greater in moments we thought insignificant? But the centurion's realization points to something even deeper, the universal impact of Christ's sacrifice. If one man, right there at Golgotha, could see what many around him didn't, what does that say about us who have the privilege of knowing the whole story? And just like him, other testimonies would soon arise, reinforcing the truth that would forever change history. So, what will you do with everything you've just learned? You can't simply ignore the impact of these events. The earthquake that shook the earth, the saints who rose, the veil that was torn, all of it points to something greater, an invitation to draw closer to God in a way that was never possible before. And here's the most incredible part. The transformation that began at Golgotha can continue today in your life, right now. Stop and think. What's been keeping you away from God? Fear? Guilt? Lack of time? It's time to tear down that veil that still tries to separate you. The cross opened the way, but it's up to you to take the next step. How about starting with something simple, like taking a moment today to reflect on Jesus' sacrifice? It could be a heartfelt prayer, a moment of Bible reading, or even sharing these truths with someone who needs to hear them. Now, before you go, let me ask you to do something important. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. That way, you can keep learning and growing in your knowledge of God. And tell me in the comments, which of these events impacted you the most? Let's explore and live out everything this message can bring to transform our lives together.